With production first beginning in 1973, this right here is a Triumph T140 Bonneville. In my opinion, one of the more misunderstood bikes of the era. This in front of me today is my T140 from 1975. I purchased this bike about a year ago, and it was a barn find, quote unquote, and we got it running. We ran it a couple of times, taken it out for a few rides, and it's been officially a year since I purchased this bike. Today I wanted to go over some things about the T140, talk to you guys about what the bike is, and talk about why this bike is misunderstood, and in my opinion, a pretty good bargain right now. Now, production of these bikes ran for 10 years, between 73 and 83. But we need to go back 2 years to where most enthusiasts say that Triumph ruined the Bonneville. In 1971, the oil and frame bikes were first introduced. What that means is a different frame style from the ones in before, and like the name suggests, the oil lives inside of the frame, unlike the previous bikes which had oil tanks on the side. By the time the T140 came around in 73, a lot of the tweaks and improvements had already been made from the couple of years before. But in 71, a lot of people complained about the handling. They said the bikes did not handle as good as the previous ones. Everyone was complaining that the Triumph Bonneville had lost its appeal. I also believe a big part of it was the styling of the motorcycles. I do believe that this is not the best looking Bonneville, and the earlier bikes, which were pre-unit in fact, are the much better, more desirable bikes, which is dictated by price as well. But just because they're better doesn't mean that this is a bad bike, and that's the opinion that most people have now gotten with the Bonneville. I've seen it in my comments sections, I've seen it across some forum posts, things like that, that the T140 for some reason is seen as a lesser bike. Now, in order to see why this bike isn't as loved as some of the earlier bikes, I think we need to flash back. Where did the name Bonneville actually come from? Well, in 1956, Triumph set a record on the Bonneville salt flats. And as the years went by, the story goes, the American market wanted more power. Triumph at the time was catering to the Americans, and they said, you know what? We're going to give 2 carburetors instead of 1, giving the name Bonneville to the sport model, which was the whole reason the Bonneville line was created. It was created to be the sport model of the Triumph motorcycles. And then eventually they went to unit constructions, and then they went to this bike right here. The T140 is a Bonneville, so it has 2 carburetors. It also features a disc brake in the front as a standard, and it features a 5-speed transmission, which was an option in the T140. But the bigger thing was the engine. The T140 featured a 750cc, while the T120 had a 650. But the Bonneville, unfortunately, due to financial constraints at the time, did not get a revised motor. This is the same motor as the T120 that was bored out to the biggest capability of a 750. Because it was bored out so big, the first year is actually a 726cc. That 726 was to make it a little bit more soft, more reliable for all the people who were worrying, but they later changed that to the big bore that you're seeing in front of me. The problem with making the motor bigger without changing anything else was the fact that they needed to put softer cams in it and make it punch a little bit less harder, which made it more of a cruiser tourer instead of that sport bike that really the Bonneville had got its name for. But the T140 still packs that extra punch that they were trying to do with the Bonneville line at the time. Unfortunately, at this point, the Triumph name, BSA, Norton, all these companies were struggling financially, and they ended up having financial difficulties, resulting in the Bonneville changing a lot. The T140 went through a lot of different variations. This right here is the early iteration, but not the earliest with the smaller motor. This here is the final year of the right-hand shift, which was featured until 1976 when they needed to update it. All the 76 bikes are left-hand shift due to American standards, and as this was an American market bike, they needed to oblige with it. The other thing they updated in 76 was the fact that they had rear disc brakes now available on the bike. I think this style of the T140 is the best, but that's my personal opinion. As the years went by, they went more towards that bobber kind of excess special style, if you might have it, and the Bonneville, in my opinion, at that point, started to lose a little bit more of its luster than it already lost going to the oil and frame. However, they're still great bikes, and if you ever get the opportunity to purchase one, I highly recommend it for a number of reasons. If you are enjoying this video so far, do me a huge favor, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. For those wondering what T140 stands for, allegedly this bike would do 140 miles per hour. Many people say that was Triumph bragging and boasting about something that didn't actually exist. They said that in the 70s, the T140 was the biggest, baddest, fastest machine that you could buy, but the CB750 was faster, and their triple, in fact, was also said to be faster than the Bonneville. But in order to sell it, that's what Triumph had claimed. But now it's 2025, and the speed war of this era of bikes is long over. If you want something fast, you can get it for the same price with a much smaller engine. As far as the Triumph T140 Bonneville goes, I still find this bike conventionally attractive as far as British bikes go. It might not have the pure styling as the early Bonnevilles had, but I still think it is a very nice bike to look at. It definitely gets a lot of heads turned to it just because it has a lot of the classic styling that was on the Bonneville. In its day, the big complaint seems to be that the handling wasn't as good as the previous model. Now looking at it, since prices are so different, we can compare this to the XS650, which in the time was also a competitor to this bike, which was cheaper, more reliable, and overall outsold these bikes. At least the name outsold it, because Yamaha continued to produce those bikes. Well, they went bankrupt. But as an owner of a 75 XS650, this bike is way smoother, it handles way better, and is a much better overall ride. If I was to pick one bike to go out and take for a ride, as I mentioned when I compared the two bikes in a previous video, the Triumph would be the bike I would ride. It has a little bit more punch, and it's a lot smoother. The XS is raw power, and it has its time and place, and I love both bikes, but the Triumph is an absolutely phenomenal machine. I bought this bike a year ago. It had been sitting for about 7 to 10 years, give or take, and it fired up in the second kick. The bike is treating me very well. Initially, I thought, you know, I got a really good deal on it. I'll buy the bike, maybe ride it around for a little bit, and then consider selling it and making some money. But as you can see, I've held on to the bike just because I really do like it. The bike desperately needs a few things like new tires and to be cleaned up overall, but it's a really original bike as far as I'm aware, and I just want to keep it as is and ride it around as a very nice Bonneville. I found this bike to be very enjoyable, not only because it's treating me so well, but it's actually a pretty good bike to ride. With that said, I think we should go take it out for a ride. It's been a while since I've started it, and I haven't rode her in quite a bit. So this side right here is the on, the other side is reserve. All right, ignition, because this bike does have ignition. Just come over and kick it over, prime it a couple times. Now we can come and give it a nice kick. How many kicks will it take? I bet in 2. All right. Okay, turn the choke. Let's see this time if it works. It's making me look bad now. Okay, so it doesn't want to start right now. That's a first. As you can tell, the British bikes don't take well to compliments. All right, let's see. British bikes, huh? You know what? Don't buy one. Don't buy one. They'll never start. Okay, so she didn't want to start. Fine. I might have flooded the carbs. I've never flooded a motorcycle's carburetors. Maybe today's the first time. I'll come back in a little bit, but some things that I do want to know about the Bonneville if we don't get it fired up by the time the video comes out. But I think these bikes are really slept on. You know, I didn't want to start today, but it's just a British bike. That's what they do. Comparing it to the other Bonnevilles is what we're trying to do today and understand why this bike didn't work, why people don't like it. And you know, at the time, I can understand why this bike wasn't as loved as some of the other bikes that had come before it. But when we're talking about 2025, these bikes haven't got too expensive. Those early Bonnevilles are starting to get more and more rare, as many of them have been destroyed, and along with that, a lot of them are just getting expensive. When we talk about one of the most iconic motorcycle lineups of the Triumph Bonneville, it's very clear that this is still a really good bike. It's still very comfortable to ride when it works, and it has good power. It has a nice, just comfortable power delivery that you would expect out of a twin. Now, unlike my 650 BSA, this bike is actually very comfortable to ride. The motor accelerates very smooth, and compared to modern day standards of vintage bikes, if that makes sense to you guys, It's a phenomenal machine to ride. Well, those are some of the quirks and things of the Triumph Bonneville. I think it's a fantastic bike overall and really slept on. If you're thinking about getting a British bike and you want something that has that classic appeal, but you're not looking to spend big money. But that's some of the history of the Triumph T140 Bonneville. If you guys are interested in checking out a video of riding the bike, I've made a separate one here, and that's the reason why we didn't ride it. Of course, it's not because the bike didn't start, it's because I wanted you to watch the other video. Anyways, that's all I have for this one, and I'll see you in the next one.